In celebration of me getting a Chainsaw Man tattoo on my leg, which is very, very sore at the time of recording, I thought I'd run down 10 of the best shonen manga that have released in the last few years. I'm calling this list the 10 best modern shonen, and the only caveat regarding that is the fact that they are modern, which means you're not going to find Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, or Dragon Ball on this list. These are all manga that started within the last 10 years or so. Some of these manga are still ongoing at the time of recording. Go check them out. They might get worse, they might get better. I like them at the time right now. Also, shonen is a little bit of a weird term these days because shonen literally means manga that is suitable to be read by young boys, and a lot of this manga really isn't, and yet it is categorized as shonen. It is featured in Shonen Jump or the Shonen Jump app. It's shonen. It's just a bit gross, some of it. And as a 30-year-old, it's all the better for it in my eyes, but that doesn't mean it's great for kids. Anyway, let's go. In honor of my tattoo, let's talk about Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is a manga written and drawn by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who also created Fire Punch. I started Fire Punch, I didn't really enjoy it, so I dropped it, but I have continued on with Chainsaw Man, volume after volume after volume. I'm reading the tankobon. I started with the physical, and now I'm reading them digitally on my Kobo. Oh my good god. When I first started reading Chainsaw Man, what I thought I was getting into was a really fun riff on shonen with a ridiculous concept, a ridiculous protagonist, something that was going to lean into schlock B-movie horror, something that was absurd and ridiculous, something that felt very 80s and 90s horror. And then it just keeps building. The world expands, the characters, the nuances of it all, it just grows and grows. Fujimoto has really taken the opportunity here to create a strange and wonderful world, while also still leaning heavy on the most absurd action scenes you could ever imagine in a shonen manga. Chainsaw Man is a ludicrous idea that only makes more sense as it goes. It tells the story of a young boy named Denji. He's 16 years old, and he has a pet dog that's a chainsaw devil. The two of them do odd jobs to pay off his father's debts to the local mafia. The father is now dead, and Denji is still stuck doing this. And then Denji gets killed, and his pet devil dog's chainsaw heart melds with his heart, and he becomes Chainsaw Man. And I won't tell you anymore, because some of the beauty of this manga is building the world and the characters as you go. There aren't really artists doing what Tatsuki Fujimoto does, though. His art with Chainsaw Man is insanely elevated. It's gorgeous, and I would say that what I have is an addiction to Chainsaw Man. Next up is Tatsuya Endo's Spy Family. Spy Family is a fantastic comedy action shonen thing. The comedy of this is stellar. It's set in a kind of 20th century Germany-esque world, and it's about a spy who, in order to complete a job, needs to build himself a fake family. He needs a wife and he needs a child, and he ends up managing to get those two things, except he's the world's greatest spy. His daughter ends up being a strange psychic that he finds in an orphanage, and his wife is a secret assassin who seems very, very meek and timid, but is anything but. The comedy here is astonishing. You will literally laugh out loud. I don't often laugh out loud when I'm reading, unless I'm reading a Terry Pratchett novel, but I laughed out loud reading Spy Family. To pull that off, you really need a great translator from Japanese to English, and the translation is done by someone called Casey Lowe, who really lands the translation in order to translate the comedy. Not only that, but the art in Spy Family is so sharp. The line work, the background details, the character expressions, it all lends itself to some great action scenes and, more importantly, some excellent comedy. The last one that I have on me is Hell's Paradise by Yuji Kaku. Yuji Kaku actually worked as an intern or an apprentice to Tatsuki Fujimoto, who made Chainsaw Man, and he has now blossomed as something really extraordinary. In fact, I might be daring enough to say that the art of Yuji Kaku is actually more intricate, more detailed, more expressive, more daring, more imaginative than that of Tatsuki Fujimoto, even though I absolutely worship the ground that Fujimoto walks on. Yuji Kaku is something very, very special, and Hell's Paradise is a gorgeously realized world. It's been a while since I actually read Hell's Paradise. Let's see if I can remember what it's about. It's about a young man called Gabimaru who is part of a ninja clan, and at the beginning of the book, he is on death's row. He's been captured, he's going to be killed, he's going to be beheaded, and then he just can't. He's too strong, he is physically incapable of being killed. And what ends up happening is that he is sent to an island off the coast of Japan to figure out what's going on there. It's an island that is populated by strange demons and monstrous things, but there's a treasure or a fountain of youth. God, I should have looked this up or reread it before I hit record. He goes there with his executioner, who is a woman who is from a family or a clan of executioners. And she has something to prove, as does Gabimaru. Although Gabimaru really is just trying to get his wife back, who he claims he doesn't love, but then he definitely does love, and there's some lovely nuances to his character in that regard. So it's about criminal executioner pairs going to an island to find something valuable and trying to survive against these monsters and demons that live there. That's the basic premise, and it is so beautifully drawn. The monsters, the creatures, the world, the island itself, the characters, everything is so beautifully drawn and well realized that you really get sucked into this world. You feel entranced by it. That's the beauty of Yuji Kaku's art. I'm going to tick off a really obvious one here. It's one that I have read quite a few volumes of, and I'm caught up on the anime as well at the time of recording. So many people have read this. It is the new great shonen manga of our day, but that doesn't mean it's not worth talking about, and that is My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia is written and drawn by Kohei Horikoshi, and it is very much inspired by Western comics, mostly the Marvel superheroes. I grew up reading Marvel and DC comics. I am a huge comic book collector, or at least I used to be, and so I found a lot to love and feel comforted by while reading My Hero Academia. I love the pacing, I love the world building, and most of all, it's the character relationships. You have a protagonist who is born without any powers in a world where 80% of people have some kind of power. It's kind of a reverse X-Men situation. Midoriya has no quirk, and he's very sad about that because he idolizes the world's greatest hero, All Might. But then one day he does some hero stuff without any powers, and he catches the attention of All Might, and All Might reveals that his power is something that can actually be passed on. And so he does. He passes his power on to Midoriya, and so Midoriya can then enter this hero high school. Now in this world, 80% of people have powers, but most of those powers are pretty useless. But some people have extraordinary gifts, and they either use them for evil to become criminals, or they decide to become heroes, and so they attend a hero school and then it becomes their job. It's a great setup. It works absolutely brilliantly. It creates an alternate world that is fun and vibrant. It is campy as hell. The characters are so well realized. Every single character in this high school class has its own defined personality, but not just personality. We're talking physical design as well. Their costumes, their expressions, their hair, their mannerisms, everything about these characters is so beautifully realized, and it really is reminiscent of the characters in One Piece. There is a vibrancy and a variety to this world, and I think that's what I like so much about My Hero Academia. There is so much vibrancy and breadth to its design. And also then you've got the villains. The villains are just very exciting people, and like the villains in a lot of Marvel comics, they are nuanced people in their own right. It's an addictive series, and I live for the way that its characters relate to one another, are drawn, are expressed. Oh, it's just wholesome, while also being pretty dark at times as well. The next one I want to talk about is, at the time of recording, a brand new manga called Kaiju No. 8. This is written and drawn by Naoya Matsumoto, and I've only read one volume because that's all we have right now, but I love kaiju. I love kaiju movies, I love the concept of kaiju, and so I was very excited for this one. It's gorgeously drawn, it immediately sets up a very vibrant and understandable world, and a protagonist who's very different from the mold. He's a guy in his early 30s who feels washed up. He grew up with a girl, and the two of them promise to become these militant kaiju hunter, kaiju warrior people. It is a world ravaged by kaiju, and these two promise to fight against them. The girl does. The guy does not. He ends up becoming part of this cleaning corps who, once a kaiju is defeated, has to come along and clean up the mess. And he meets a young boy who joins their corps, who basically tells him, look, you don't have to be washed up. We can go and we can try again. The two of us, let's go and train. Let's go and apply for the Kaiju Killer Corps. And so they do. But then he gets injured, and in his hospital bed, this strange flying little mosquito kaiju thing comes up to him and says something like, "Ah, you're the one I've been looking for," and then flies into him, and he transforms into a kaiju, but sort of a human-sized one. And now he can transform into a kaiju, and he has all the strength of a kaiju. I won't tell you anymore. It's a really, really fun romp. I am thrilled to see a modern shonen manga that is all about kaiju. It's pretty much giving me everything I personally have wanted for so long, and I can't wait to see how it continues to build and grow, but Kaiju number 8 is something you need to keep an eye on. Another obvious one that most people have read, or at least heard of, is One Punch Man. One Punch Man was originally written and drawn by One, the guy who also created Mob Psycho 100, which is probably my favorite anime ever. But then Yusuke Murata came along and refined it and redrew it and turned it into this serialized thing that we have now. And is Yusuke Murata the greatest manga artist ever? Maybe? His art is like nothing you'll ever see. I find it extraordinary. I'm not caught up on One Punch Man. I read quite a few volumes and I watched season 1 of the anime, which is a spellbinding spectacle of sakuga and beautiful fight scenes. And then season 2 was handled by a different studio and was a complete letdown. And I wrote some reviews of season 2 for IGN and got death threats because the anime community is terrifying. One Punch Man is still absolutely worth reading, even if you loved season 1 of the anime and you think, okay, I got everything I needed to out of that. Read the manga, because the action scenes are just as beautifully drawn in the original manga as they were animated in season 1 of the anime. One Punch Man tells the story of a young guy who just exercised a bit and then became the most powerful superhero ever. It's a ludicrous concept. I love it. I love its comedy. I love all of the social commentary that it's making, but in a very, very light and easy and fun way. It's a manga that does as much serious work within its narrative and characters as it does making fun and satirizing other aspects of popular culture and superhero culture, etc. Oh, it's a lot of fun, but you probably know that because everyone's read One Punch Man. Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone is a manga I'm putting on this list even though I've only read the first 2 volumes of the manga and watched a few episodes of the anime, but I can see the potential and I can see where it's going to go. I just haven't read that far into it yet. It's written by Riichiro Inagaki, and the art is handled by, I believe, a Korean artist called Boichi. And Dr. Stone, again, is absolutely beautiful to look at. I love the character designs, I love the world design. It takes place in a world that is suddenly engulfed in a light that turns everybody to stone for like 14,000 years. And then a few people start waking up, and one of those people is the titular Dr. Stone, who is this high school kid who comes off a lot like Rick from Rick and Morty. He's a lot of fun, he's an arrogant genius scientist kid. He wakes up and his best friend, who is the ultimate himbo, also happens to wake up, and then his main focus is trying to wake up the girl that he had a crush on, who he was about to declare his love for before everybody in the world suddenly turned to stone. It's edutainment, because it's really, really got a focus on chemistry and sort of how to survive in the wilderness. Dr. Stone has a lot to teach. It's very aware that it is a shonen manga and a lot of readers are going to be quite young boys who might be interested in learning stuff about chemistry and engineering. It's about survival, but it also has absurd, caricatured characters which are so necessary for a world like this one. A world that is quiet, a world that has been overtaken by nature, and so you need big, loud characters to carry the story, and they really do. I can't wait to read more of it. Snowy decided to join the party. Okay, so this next one is another obvious one, and that is Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. I think a lot of people have seen Demon Slayer. The anime is absolutely one of my favorite ever. I love it to bits. The manga? That's an interesting one. Now, the manga was created, written, and drawn by Koyohara Gotoge, and she's a wonderful writer. She's not a great artist, and so the Demon Slayer manga is a very rough read. It's very rough around the edges. And I came into the manga... Snowy. I came into the manga after seeing season 1 of the anime, and the anime is beautiful. The animation, the art design, it's so textured and colourful and bright, and the sakuga is obscene in some of the fight scenes. And the manga just isn't there in terms of its visuals, but Gotoge created this world, she is writing it, she is doing a great job, or has done, it's finished. And I'm so grateful to her for creating one of my favourite stories in manga and anime, and some of my favourite characters as well. I just think the anime is a lot better. But if you want to read the original, read it. The Promised Neverland is something particularly special. Written by Kaiju Shirai and drawn by Posca Demizu, it is an extraordinary shonen manga. The Promised Neverland takes place at the beginning in an orphanage in what looks like the English countryside, a place called Gracefield House. And it's about a group of kids who live with mother, this woman who looks after them. But they've all got tattoos on their necks, and every day they have to take a strange test, and they can never leave the grounds of the house. So what the hell is going on? Then it turns into a horror within the first chapter. Then it turns into a thriller. Then it turns into an adventure. Then it turns into science fiction. The Promised Neverland is difficult to talk about because it's so easy to spoil things again and again and again. There are constant twists and turns in terms of what gets revealed, what happens next to the characters, the world building, the lore of it, the past, the background, everything that's going on in this world. It's too good to spoil. The Promised Neverland is absolutely one of my favorite manga ever. I didn't love season 1 of the anime, mostly because I didn't feel like it lived up to the manga in terms of its aesthetics and even its pacing and tone. The anime just doesn't have that fear factor. The manga is genuinely terrifying. The character design, the monster design, the way that certain scenes are shot, if you like, the angles and the reveals, there are real horror moments, especially early on in the manga, and the anime didn't have any of that, in my opinion. And then season 2 of the anime, I haven't seen it. It's supposed to be the worst thing ever, so I'm glad I didn't finish season 1 because then I would have been too invested. But the manga never lets you down, not for a single moment. The Promised Neverland is incredible character writing, world building, world design, plotting, everything. And the fact that it mixes and blends so many genres so artfully is a testament to the power of manga, the power of storytelling. I could talk about it forever. The Promised Neverland is something so special. Last is possibly my favorite shonen manga, and that is Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is written and drawn by Gege Akutami, who is a visionary. The guy is my age, and he has done something extraordinary with the world of shonen manga. Very heavily inspired by the manga that he grew up on, especially Bleach, which I never finished. Jujutsu Kaisen is like nothing else. Jujutsu Kaisen is frightfully good. Its protagonist is a himbo, and I love himbos. Its world design and its power systems and its struggle between light and dark, good and evil is very familiar while entirely original. Gege Akutami toes this line between creating something that is comfortably familiar and something that is extraordinarily new and exciting. I don't know how he manages it. Everything in Jujutsu Kaisen feels familiar in terms of its tone and its characters and the stakes and the plotting and the pacing. All of this stuff is stuff you've seen before, but it's done better here. It's done with a new eye, a new angle. It's done with horror infused into it. This is dark and bloody and gory. It's also got a greater emphasis on grey areas between good and evil. There is not a clear delineation here. There is a smushiness to the good and evil dichotomy. The power systems actually explain why characters would go on long rants about their powers and what they're about to do. It's very cleverly done and almost tongue-in-cheek. I can't say enough good things about Jujutsu Kaisen. If you've seen the anime, you also know how good that is. It is a perfect adaptation. It is beautifully drawn, wonderfully animated, excellent voice acting. I love the anime to pieces, and it's where I started, and now I'm just slowly going through the manga, and I can't stop. Jujutsu Kaisen might well be my favorite manga. I don't know if I've already said that, but I love manga, and I could say that a lot. Jujutsu Kaisen is necessary shonen manga reading. It is something that nobody should ever miss out on if they are even a cursory manga fan. Alright, I'll stop there. These are all great manga. Please check them out. And also go visit Sticky Pop if you're in the UK. Sticky Pop is the artist who did my Chainsaw Man tattoo. I'm very grateful to him. Subscribe for books.